Okay, hi again. I'm just going to show you a quick sort of rundown on how to do values to color. Um, just so you know, there's lots of resources out there, but I'll just try and explain it relatively quickly. So there are a lot of techniques, um, too many to list. One of the ways that I find to be the best is what I learned from Darkin, and he has a lot of really great resources on his website. I think it's enlighten.com. We're checking out. Um, what he does, he starts in black and white, and then he will create a layer on top, and he'll turn it to color. So Photoshop does have this capability here. So the color layer basically applies a flat color and does not adjust the values at all. So I'm going to dump a black layer on top of everything, turn it to saturation, and obviously if I toggle this on and off, nothing changes because we're already in black and white. So this color layer, I'm going to select again. I'm going to make it red, and I'm going to choose like a really rich saturated red, and then we're going to paint over this on the color layer. And that's what you'll get. So now if we check the values with the saturation layer, all the values have remained the same. But it doesn't look great, and that's why you're going to have to go back and tweak it. It's not going to come out looking exactly like what you want it to look like. So it's going to be a combination of different layer types. So the next one I'm going to do is maybe another color layer because I want to keep these values. But I'm going to have a blue sky. Oh, my brushes are broken. Oh, because I'm painting on a color layer. Huh. Okay, so I am going to get myself a nice sky blue. And I can paint this on really gently with just a diffused kind of airbrushy brush. And my cat is breaking everything. So already we're kind of adding this blue onto the ball here. You don't want to put it on too strong like that unless the light is really strong. But in this case, we're just going to do light. Okay, and so if I did this bright blue, the shadows would take on a warm kind of hue, which we already kind of have, so not really making much of a difference there. So that's what you would have just with working with color layers. But now, and you just keep building this up. So overlay is a good one. It will just kind of, it's an additive layer. Not layer styles, but you know what I mean. But like if you used multiply, that one will just add the darks and like just layer it on top of it. So the overlay is a better kind of version of multiply because it's not as strong. and it's not layering the hue or the values on top. So if you used multiply on this ball, it would just get darker and darker and darker, even if you're adding like a red layer on top or a white layer. It would just keep multiplying and get darker. Um, I don't know if that's entirely the case with multiply, but that's kind of how I use it. So I use overlay because it just works better without washing things out. Um, so this blue light, I can kind of lighten this up with an overlay layer. And this red, I want to make it a little more orange, a little more dark. So I'm going to do that here. I want to desaturate it more. So now it would have helped if I had painted the ball well in the first place. So now we see the values are still looking pretty good. Always check that. And then you would just start painting on top. So I'll make another layer. So start off with color, get your colors in, go to an overlay to just kind of fix up the colors, add in variants if you need to, and then you're just going to paint on top. Oop, if I could choose the right layer. So I'm just choosing the darks to kind of smooth this out. Bring some of the blue down here a little bit. And then I want this to be a little bit more bright. There. So it's not perfect, but you take time with it, you'll get the effect that you want. So if I wanted to make a skin tone, I do the same thing, color. Let's say we're going to do a darker skinned person. So it's going to be a lot of trial and error. I've been doing it this way for a long time, so I know that I kind of want a little bit of a saturated brown just to start off with, and then we can tweak it as we go. So we'll just say that this is like a skin tone in an ambient lighting scenario. Okay, so I can add a little bit of color variance if I want, so I'm just brushing in some warms just for some variance. So, okay, and then I'm going to hit it with some overlay. I'm going to choose some highlight colors. Darker skin tends to have more warms in them unless you're like going really, really dark skin. Then it can even have like blue undertones. But I personally have red. So I'm just going to paint kind of my skin tone, I guess. So now, for overlays, I always like to use a kind of fuzzy brush because it's forgiving and you can hit a big area without it being perfect. So the overlay, you'll see I have this really bright color picked, and it's going to turn things weird colors. Like this is what the overlay layer does. If this were multiply, it would just stack those values together, so you would get that. And multiply works great when you need it to, so nothing wrong with it. I just don't want to use it right now. So I'm going to add some highlight color in here. And then I'm going to choose a little, I think I'll go a little bit. So this is going to be my cooler colors, so I'm going down toward the blues this way, kind of this purple. But I want to keep things now a little desaturated as I get into the shadow areas. Okay, so it's not perfect, but we're already getting kind of a fleshy tone to this. And then I would just go to a normal painting layer, get whatever painting brush you prefer, and start blending things in. In the case of skin, variance is good because nobody has perfect flawless skin. So I'm just kind of doing circular motions because I don't want to just, if I just did blends like this, it gets really smooth and I don't want to do that. I want it to look interesting. And then skin has little imperfections. So I'm just taking a darker color and adding some little bit of textures. So I'm going off my skin color, which is more like an olive, I guess. So I can lighten that up a little. Yeah, so that's really all there is to it. It just takes practice. So color layer, some overlay layer, and then you inevitably will be painting on a normal layer on top. So something to try out. I'm going to add some veins. Yeah. There you go. It's beautiful. Depending on what body part you're working on, there could be more reds in it too. So noses. If you want to just glaze some color on very easily, that's the overlay layer. Oops, no, I don't want to swap that. So you can do another overlay on top of all your other layers, and it's just gonna warm it up, just with a little bit of warm, a little bit of red. So nose, ears, lips, joints, the edges of your fingers, those all get warm spots, and that's where you could just brush an overlay red over top, just very gently. This is full pressure, very, very gently, just a nice little blush. Or you can even do a normal layer, depending on what stage you're at. with your painting, but then it washes out all those details I put in. So overlay works just fine for me for most applications. So yeah, I hope that helps a little bit. We'll get more into that, um, but definitely experiment in your own personal work, doing values first and then getting color on top. Just make sure, try not to add your very bright highlights to a value painting that you're going to add color onto. Um, this one I got a little too bright, but that's why it got kind of washed out with the colors. The color layer, it can't stick to white, and your highlights aren't necessarily going to be white. So you want to make sure that you have a value here that your color layer can stick onto. So it's literally like if I painted a white circle here, and then I have these gray bits out here. If I brush this with a color layer, we'll do blue. It's not going to pick up that white, but it'll pick up all those other values. Not really so much the darks either. This just ends up being black. This just ends up being white. So then you lose some of your color information. It doesn't look as good. So just make sure you have your brushes working before you paint. Oh, it's on color layer, that's why. And then paint in a wide spectrum of values. Leave your whites and highlights for last. I recommend going from dark to light, just because traditional painters do that. You don't have to. Whatever works. And I don't know why I did that. Alright, enjoy your flesh orb. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. Alright, bye.